Course, and Greg, what part of the city are you?
All right, so we are joined from New York City and from Atlanta by Tiago Rachelson, Assistant Vice President of Community Development with City Credit Cards, and Cameron Nolan, marketing entrepreneur and part of the marketing team there at Morehouse College. We thank you guys so much for joining us today. This is our personal finance class here at Velma Jackson High School. I've got a room full here with me, and we're recording this for all of our friends in Madison County schools, Madison Central, Ridgeland High School, Germantown High School, the Academic Option Center, and our YouTube channel. So thank you guys so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having
All
us.
right, now obviously we want to talk about the HR aspect that you see at City Credit Cards and also some of the marketing skills that kids can learn now in high school. Why that's so important in both regards. But I want to know, we watched Tiago's nuclear viral video that was part of Vice News, and people want to be internet famous, and you accomplished that. And you know, I know about your background, but I want to hear both of your backgrounds. I know, Tiago, you're originally from Miami, went to Morehouse. Cameron, you also graduated from Morehouse, one of the most unbelievable universities in the United States. So just give us a little background about your journey to Morehouse and how that shaped you and where that led you after Morehouse.
Yeah, appreciate it. And thanks for the time and the opportunity. Uh, for me, I went to middle school and high school in Miami, Florida, and one of my high school teachers who taught oratory and debate or speech writing was a Morehouse man. He was also a diversity practitioner, also a basketball coach, one of the coolest, most magnetic personalities in my high school, I think, that we ever had. Just
Wow.
had this vibe to him that made people, including myself, gravitate towards him. And I got to know him and got to learn more about his background during my time in high school. And I thought of him as this incredible leader, someone that was very service minded, gave 100% of himself to
Wow.
communities and to changing the world in a positive way. And I just wanted to follow that same path in my life. And when I talked to him, he told me that he went to this school in Atlanta, Georgia, a small school that was dedicated for men to develop themselves into leaders. And it was called Morehouse College. And even though the school was predominantly black and historically black, that there have been examples of a few white male students that have gone there, been a part of the brotherhood, been a part of the culture, and been able to learn and contribute to that long legacy. And I just saw myself in that sort of light. And so I think my Morehouse, journey was amazing and very transformative. I was blessed to really meet so many amazing Morehouse brothers, including Cam here. And I've been able to, continue that relationship I had with my high school teacher, who's sort of a mentor figure to me. And, now I think I'm, 8 years or so since that documentary and almost 5 since I've graduated. I think that really just every day I try to focus on my purpose, which is to sort of inspire and to sort of use my work, my experience, my relationship to just make life better for those sort of around me, and to truly be sort of that Morehouse man that makes a difference in the world.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and for me, one, I'm thankful to be speaking to Velma Jackson right now. Proud graduate of Murrah High School. I'm from Jackson, Mississippi
Oh,
originally.
wow. Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Very familiar with
We'll
Velma
make
Jackson.
sure we send this to our friends down in Jackson Public Schools then. Go ahead. That's awesome.
Please, please. So, started my journey very similar to Tiago, just getting exposed to what that Morehouse framework is. And I remember at my time, I was going through the whole counselor circuit and looking at schools, applying to schools, visiting and touring schools. And there was one particular school in northern Mississippi that I won't name for the sake of just confidentiality. But I will say they had the same colors as Morehouse College. I'll give you that here. They had and while I was touring with this particular state school, everything was fine. The campus culture was good, but we had to have a group of maybe 200 people on the tour. I was one of few black students on the tour. and everything that we had, it was a black alternative. So there was an engineering club, and then they looked directly at me and they said, "We have a black engineering club." And then we had a student union, and then they looked directly at me and said, "We had a black student union." So very vocal. I'm raising my hand like, "Hey, like, why do you feel the need to have all of these separate but same blankly that this black students on campus didn't feel represented, and so that they created their own." And for me, as a high school student coming right out of Murrah, I was like, that's not a good sell for me personally, right? And so my father went to Morehouse, but he never pushed Morehouse on me. Like you would never know that my dad went to Morehouse. He doesn't wear Morehouse clothes for real. You know, Morehouse men are very prideful. So we had all types of paraphernalia and little trinkets here and there, but my father, he just didn't operate like that. And so it kind of gave me like this natural curiosity to what is Morehouse. And so I'm an only child as well. And I remember after I did the applying and everything, I toured Morehouse and everything was, hey brother, are you good, brother? And I'm looking around. I'm like, are there cameras? Like, why is everyone so friendly? I thought it was a facade just for the sake of the tours that made a students weekend. And then, I started meeting people like Tiago and other classmates that I have, and it was just a real genuine sense of brotherhood. And for me, as an only child, I was like, this is very important. Not only can I develop myself academically, but I can also develop myself socially. And the social capital that Morehouse provides is far
Oh
none.
man,
It
tell me
doesn't,
about it.
there's no comparison. So that's kind of how I got to Morehouse. And I think it was the best decision I could have possibly made.
Yeah, and I want to come back to that social capital because I think that's extremely important. But obviously, the way we found Tiago, Lee Adams of Vice News did an unbelievable piece with Minority Report to talk about the path of a white student at a HBCU. So I thought Tiago was painted in a very positive light. Very, very impressed with some of the things he said and we were having a little conversation before you came on about some of the topics that were talked about in the video. And I said, look, he said himself. I should only be here if I earn it. I shouldn't get anything special. I should have to work just as hard as anybody else. So, you became internet famous, and these kids want to be TikTok famous. They want to be internet famous. And, you know, like it or not, you accomplished that. And it's impressive. But what type of responsibility comes with that? Because people want to be seen, but then once you're seen, you have to live up to the hype. So after the documentary broke and you were being interviewed by national magazines, international magazines all over the world, how did that scrutiny affect you to hold up the reputation that you showed in that piece?
Wow, great question. Um, I'll say, and I might need you to resurface the question, but I'll say to sort of some of your high school students that validation and fame and celebrity, these things are very sort of overrated and empty in many ways. I think for me, I think I was always inspired by figures, public figures, public speakers, public intellectuals that were using their platforms to say something positive, make a dent
Yeah.
in the world.
There you
And
go.
I thought, years ago when I was approached about the opportunity, I thought maybe I could have that same sort of outcome, less driven to sort of become, have that like 15 minutes of fame. Because I think I was wise enough to know that sort of, that would be fleeting, but really trying to focus on sort of making, you know, that sort of that positive change and really speak about how much I loved Morehouse and why I think it was special for me and why, it's made such a positive impact in my life. And it's really because the whole idea of the institution is about doing things that are bigger than yourself, and
Wow.
to kind of focus on your own development as a man. Not everything is about status. Not everything is about building wealth and making money. There's a lot about sort of service and your influence. So the scrutiny sort of around the video and sort of the responsibility I carry is like, after the video aired, but before too, I always felt like an immense sense of responsibility. I knew when I was going to Morehouse that I couldn't just like walk in there and be sort of arrogant and not be aware of the
Yeah.
space that I was walking into. I was very serious about sort of that space, and it was an incredible privilege to be there as a white student at Morehouse, because there's a long, list of men, particularly black men, that are there, and I stand on their shoulders,
Yeah.
and their sort of inclusivity, their open mindedness, what they've done. That is the reason that I'm there to begin with. And so,
That's awesome.
following just the Vice documentary, and regardless of if the documentary ever came out, like I always felt that sense of responsibility, and that
That's awesome.
awareness of that privilege.
Now, Cameron just mentioned social capital, and that's such a great way to word it. Because one thing we try to tell our young people is no matter where they decide to go to school, whether they decide to go to community college, get a trade, whether they decide to go to HBCU, PWI, whatever they decide, but everybody's situation is different. But at the end of the day, everybody's needs are the same
Hmm.
because you can have a 4.0 GPA, have the toughest major, but you can graduate from college and nobody will know who you are. So getting involved in things in the community. I know it was really cool in the documentary. You were the president of Grace Hall there in your dorm at Morehouse. We have kids interested in the Greek organizations, but you don't necessarily have to do that. But people have to know who you are because the saying is not what you know, it's who you know. I take it one step farther and say it's who knows you. So you have to build that social capital. You have to build a name for yourself. You got to be comfortable walking into a room and introducing yourself. You've got to have those speaking skills. You got to have those sales skills. So, as two men that have graduated from a great university and got a great education, that was only part of the battle. So, what other ways were you able to get social capital, and why is that so important in building your career?
Yeah,
Cameron, man, this is a good one for you to answer, right?
yeah, I could take this one. So, just to give a little bit more context. So, when I was at Morehouse, super involved with the Student Government Association from the time I was a freshman all the way through senior year, and was fortunate enough to be elected as Student Government Association president for my senior
Oh,
year.
wow. That's awesome.
And so a part of, thank you. And a part of that social capital, it was always about building relationships. And I had a sales professor, I love him to death, Professor Corrales. And he would always tell us, he's like, if you're not working, you're not networking. Or if you're not networking, rather, you're not working. And it was
There you go.
always the sense of this double entendre, right? That networking in and of itself is working. However, if you do not network, you will not put yourself in a position to find work later. And so that was always something that was replaying in the back of my mind is just how am I building relationships? But I think that everyone has to think in this quid pro quo type of mindset that like, not only do I need something from you, but that means I'll have to present like a value to you as well, right? It has to be something that I can contribute and be of service. And that goes to Tiago's earlier point about just this gravity that it takes to be a Morehouse man. Like there's a responsibility. And so it's just, I would never be connected to you, Greg, if I wasn't on this conversation because of Tiago. So all of these things are a part of how the social capital network of Morehouse goes. And you'll look up and Morehouse geographically is located in Atlanta, Georgia, but the stretch of Morehouse is worldwide. And so you can go to the Chicago's, you can go to the Houstons, the New Yorks, the LA's, and still find Morehouse men. You can go abroad. You can go to the Germanys. You can go to Ireland and find Morehouse men there. And so I just think that that is just, it's so impressive when you go to Morehouse and you know that the campus in and of itself is small. It's a small campus. It's one street, literally.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But the fact that it just touches the every corner of the globe is just so impressive to me for sure.
absolutely. And then on top of that, you look at HBCU, and before we started recording, I said HBCU stands for historically black. It does not stand for exclusively black.
Mhm.
And we were having a conversation before you guys came on about, Jackson State here in Mississippi has done a great job of diversifying their campus. And the term used in the Vice piece was non-traditional HBCU student. Jackson State has almost 1,000 international students now. They have a guy from Bulgaria on the basketball team. They had a white quarterback on the football team, and all of them have said the same thing. Yes, it's a HBCU, but I was able to find my place here and build that network and be able to get into that career that I was trying to get.
Yeah, I think HBCUs have always been this way. I think they've always had an open door policy. I mean, the founding of HBCUs were to educate a group of students or a entire demographic that was excluded from education. So like inclusivity is within the DNA of HBCUs. And I think that, a lot of the benefits of coming to an HBCU, non-traditional is a very all-encompassing word, but let's say if you're not a Black student and you're coming to an HBCU, the benefit of that is that you're in a position now where for a lot of the other parts of your life you're in a privileged position, a majority position, but sort of being at an HBCU you have to sort of be uncomfortable, and things aren't necessarily like you're not going to have the utmost privilege that you once did. The privilege is there, but is just different, and I think that is a benefit. But yeah, HBCUs are incredibly diverse. There are always international students during Cam and I's time, and I was a small piece in that larger puzzle, and I always found Morehouse to be diverse. Like the amount of perspectives that are there, the amount of cultures, the amount of languages, it's deeper than just race. I think that
There you go.
America can,
So,
especially on even my own documentary, right? People can obsess around race, and I get it because of the optics. But if people were to, go to Morehouse and do a documentary on just the Black students, you'd find as much diversity there.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. Now, they're handing me some really good questions that I want to get to, but one last thing I want to talk about before I get to their questions is, obviously this is our personal finance class. We've talked about career development. But one thing that I think a lot of students overlook is the importance of understanding financial literacy, just the basics as you navigate through college, navigate your career. I know, Cameron, you're an entrepreneur. And Tiago actually works for a credit card company. So you guys are dealing with, and you guys have been very vocal about educating underserved communities in financial literacy. So as kids again matriculate, make their decisions after high school, why is it so important to understand just the basics of simple things like having the right bank account, having a retirement account, knowing how to budget your money, knowing how to apply for a loan?
Yeah, and Cam, I definitely want to hear your
for
perspectives here.
sure.
First of all, I'll just say the disclaimer that in the context of sort of this call and speaking to the class, and if this airs on YouTube, I am speaking on behalf of myself, not my company.
Absolutely,
But
absolutely.
for but for me, personal finances during your 20s and in your life as a young adult is paramount. It's like it sets up the rest of your life, regardless of your background, your race, your ethnicity, what language you speak. We all have personal finances, and so during your 20s, which is like the building decade, it is paramount to learn about how to use things like credit cards wisely. It can easily become a trap, but through dedication and discipline, it can also be something that's really beneficial for your life. It can open doors to housing. It can open doors to really awesome travel experiences. It can affect, your career, your opportunity to own a home. It's absolutely important. So I would stress to sort of your students is when they enter college, and go into their 20s. First of all, really educate yourself about credit cards and how they work.
Yeah.
Start with YouTube. Start with all the resources that are available on the internet and through AI that can really educate you about personal finances. Cam, what would you say?
Yeah, so 100% agree with you, Tiago. I'll come from a different lens from the entrepreneur perspective. So, as you know, I run the social medias for Morehouse, but everything that I do for Morehouse, I also do for myself with my own business. And if I was talking or in the position of the personal finance class, I would always think about how do I monetize my art? And I'm an artist for my own sake, but how
That's
do you
awesome.
monetize anything that you have a specific skill set? If you really love fitness, how do you monetize fitness as a trainer or a coach, right? And so I always had that entrepreneurial mindset when it comes to things, but the reason why you have to like really study the business side because there are tax advantages, right? And that's a whole separate conversation. But when you're looking at things and you're wanting to find the ways in which you can beat the system or whatever you want to call it, right? You need to be aware of, what are my tax benefits of doing this particular thing? Like, what does it look like to have a business account and a personal checking account? Because those are two separate things. Tiago brought up the great idea of like credit. Credit is also equally important, but so is business line of credit, which is a completely
Mm.
different process and completely different standard. So, like, just having those conversations now in high school, I think is just super important. So by the time that you're in undergrad, graduating into your 20s, man, you're leaps and bounds ahead of the competition.
Now, and I've got some great questions here. I'm gonna get to as many of these as I can, but real quick before I get to those, I do want to point out I've actually had young men tell me I don't want to go to Morehouse because I want to be around women, and I'm like, you do realize they're across the street from Spelman, where they have all types of unbelievable women that are looking to date a Morehouse man. So I don't want that to deter anyone saying, well, I don't want to go to an all boys school. Well, you're not out in the middle of nowhere. You're in Atlanta. You're by Clark Atlanta, which has women, and you're by Spelman that has women. So for anybody that says they don't want to go to a boys school, might want to think twice about that if you're looking at Morehouse.
And I would say confidently, my girlfriend is a Spelmanite, so
That's
trust
awesome.
it
That's
works.
awesome.
Sure.
Love to
That's
hear
awesome.
that.
Well, I do have some questions, and these are really good. I'm glad they're thinking about this. This first one is John Kincaid. He's in ninth grade, 10th grade. I'm sorry, I always get his grade wrong. But he asked, "What was your best experiences at Morehouse, and how did you guys pay for it? Did you get a scholarship, or did you deal with a lot of student debt?"
Best experiences, uh, great one. I think best experiences. It's hard to like talk about like a specific experience, but I think the relationships are the best part about Morehouse. The friendships that I made, the relationships that I built with my professors, the fact that Cam and I still talk, at least once or twice a year. And he's doing amazing things. I'm so proud of him. Um, regarding finances or scholarships at Morehouse, everybody has, a unique journey. I think, my family was uh, gung ho when I told them that I first wanted to go to Morehouse. That student loans weren't something that they wanted me to personally take on. So I really sought after like a lot of different scholarships. So um, because I knew that I wasn't going to be able to go to Morehouse without that.
Yeah.
So uh, that was sort of my experience.
Yeah, and for me, starting with the first part of best experience or favorite experience, like Tiago, it's countless experiences at Morehouse that I just look back with just the fondest of memories. One thing that I will say in particular is Morehouse, and they call it the Morehouse mystique, which is basically just the secretness of Morehouse, right? The Morehouse mystique, right?
Yeah.
And new student orientation or NSO is one of the most pivotal points of that Morehouse mystique, right? And when I think about being a participant in NSO and then leading NSO, I always remind myself of that. Is if you watch cartoons, it's almost like the Avatar, and it's like the Avatar cycle. Like you're passing
Yeah.
on something else to the next generation, and they're keeping it going. And you're always reflecting on your experiences when you were a freshman, and then even as a
Mm.
senior and as an alum, like I don't know, it brings you back to a particular moment in time, always. And so I always look back at my Morehouse experience with fond memories over NSO. And then to the second part of the question with NSO, I mean, with finances, for me personally, I leveraged every scholarship and resource that I had available to me. So I was blessed and fortunate enough that my mother was in the military for 30 years. So I definitely took full benefit of the GI Bill. GI Bill paid half of my institution scholarship or half of my college tuition, rather. And then through academics and just good test scores and everything else, Morehouse paid the other half. And so I was able to, finish Morehouse with zero debt. And in
Wow, that's
today's
awesome.
world, it's like such a privilege, such a blessing, because when you talk about the traps and everything that comes with it, when you're looking at financial decisions, student loans and paying the interest on said student loans is just something that you're just going to constantly deal with until you attack it. So
Yeah,
I would highly recommend, like, please, please, please take the classes that you're in seriously. Take the test scores. My grandparents were serious about me taking like ACT practice course. I was spending Saturdays taking ACTs. It wasn't fun, but it paid off in the long run. So
Well, Cam, I can tell you, and I'm pretty sure it's the same way at JPS. They're actually getting ACT classes on their schedule and are getting to take the ACT during school for
yes,
free. Where was that when we needed it? So
yeah,
it's
I didn't make
amazing. Yeah, because it's something that's come in the last few years, so it's important to take advantage of that. All right, I got time for two more. This one is Leah Smith. She wants to go to Howard, also wants to go to HBCU, wants to be an attorney, and she has one question for each of you. Her question for Cam is, how did Morehouse shape your mindset and help you change any previous thoughts you had on attending?
great question. Um, I'll put it like this. When you age, right, and I'll come from a man versus woman perspective. Men don't necessarily have just inherently this rite of passage that makes you a man, right? But it's a level of maturity that comes with it, a level of responsibility and a weight that comes with it. And it's not to say that I was childish before Morehouse, but Morehouse just instilled, just because of the big brothers and all of the people and the professors and the faculty and staff that are pouring into you. You want to grow up. I want to walk into the room and feel like I own it. I want to make sure that, I'm giving my best foot forward. And I think any college, any gender, this will happen to you is when you're separated from your parents, especially if you go to a school that is not in your state, you're forced to be an adult. And that changes
Yeah,
your mindset. I will highly recommend everybody leave your state. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Highly recommend it because when you're in those positions and you have to figure out, I have $5 in my bank account and I'm starving, right?
that's
How
real.
do I eat? How do I eat today? That's a different conversation than had I stayed home and I have $5 in my bank account. I'm calling mom like, hey mom, can you
Mhm.
put some spaghetti to the side for me? Right. So I think those type of moments are just definitely transcending because I mean it just matures you. And I think that every institution that you will go to will mature you. But places like a Howard, places like a Morehouse, places like a Spelman, I think that the rate in which it matures you is just significantly faster compared to, other institutions.
Yeah, and we have students also interested in Xavier down in New Orleans, which is for their pharmacy school. Fisk up in Nashville. Some of those, you get to be in the big city, but you're there and you got to grow up in a hurry. Now, her
100.
question for Tiago is: did your experience as a white student at an HBCU change your perspective of your future, and what was the most positive effect it had on you?
Oh man, these questions are so, they're broad. I mean, it had Morehouse is the most consequential part of my entire life. Like, I think there you could like take my life and section into like before Morehouse and then after Morehouse, like or the time that I was first introduced to it. Before Morehouse, before I knew of Morehouse, like before I was like 14, 15 years old, I would say I was just kind of floating through life. Not really sure of my purpose, not really sure of my identity or where I was going to go. The moment I learned about Morehouse, it hit me, and I just started thinking about sort of more important things in my life, like my purpose, like the impact I want to make, the type of life I want to live. Um,
Awesome.
Going to Morehouse, Cam alluded to this, but it's a pressure cooker, and constantly, you know, stretching you, and you're uncomfortable, you're transforming, you're becoming a man, you're dealing with finances, new freedom, classes, responsibilities, the weight of like, your career aspirations, the past. I think, it helped me sort of go deeper into myself and focus on sort of uncovering my identity, revealing my purpose, and then getting to practice that every day. I made a lot of mistakes, and there's definitely things I think would have done differently if I had the same chance. But no doubt about it, it was the best thing that probably ever happened to me in my life.
That's awesome.
Because fast forward to 2025, the type of life that I'm able to sort of live now and the experience that I have, without a doubt, like if I didn't go to Morehouse and I didn't have that exposure and I didn't have, the group of Morehouse brothers that I've met over my life, if I hadn't met them, I would not have had sort of the type of experiences that I've had and be able to, influence people in a positive way. So
that's awesome.
I have so much to credit it to.
Yeah, and just to real quick, to allude to the piece again, I thought it was so funny the way you handled your situation. You were a student ambassador, which is another great way to get involved on a campus, in my opinion, because you meet everybody coming to look at the campus, and you said, "Well, I know you guys weren't expecting this." I just thought that was so funny. We'll mention it before we go. Now, I got one more question, and this one's for Cam, and I love this question. This is from DeQuavian Black, one of our football players and basketball players here at Velma Jackson, and he asked, Cam, you've made it to Atlanta. Do you feel like you're someone that has, quote, made it out of Mississippi?
Mm, mm. Great question. Great question. I'll put it like this. Because if I didn't go Morehouse and I had to get philosophical a little bit. Um, but there's an old African principle called Sankofa, and that was one thing that Morehouse taught me. I would have never known of this word had I not gone to Morehouse. But Sankofa is the concept of always looking back and always remembering where you come from. And I
Wow.
think it's very important to explore outside of Mississippi specifically. But Mississippi was always be home. Let me be very clear. I was just at Jackson State homecoming like 3 weeks ago. So I love everything about it. But I do think that there are things that Atlanta offers that Mississippi doesn't, right? And
Yeah,
that's
I agree.
all other major cities as well. So I never come with this perspective that I made it out of Mississippi, right? But I do think that there's this level of responsibility that I have newfound knowledge that I wasn't exposed to while I was in Mississippi. But it is still my responsibility, that Sankofa piece, to give that information back to Mississippi, right? To
Yeah.
even be in conversations like this that we're having right now, right? So I don't want to create this sense of there's this separation between Mississippi and Atlanta and Chicago, Boston, wherever you are, but a level of connection, because home will always be home. You can't choose home, but you have to honor your home, and it's your responsibility and your weight to make your home better. So I hope that
Yeah,
answers.
and just going there, it doesn't mean it's permanent. I've
Correct.
mentioned a couple of my high school classmates at Madison Central went to Spelman, and now they're back in Mississippi, and they were grateful for that Spelman experience in Atlanta. They got to do the Atlanta thing, but their career was back here, and their home was back here. So that's a great point. Now we're almost out of time, and we thank you guys so much for taking some time for us. I've really enjoyed this. But a couple things before we go, like we mentioned, I would encourage everybody to go to YouTube and watch the piece on Tiago, and I think Cam, you're on there as well. Minority Reports, white student at a historically black college, university. It's a very deep conversation, a very real conversation. Like I was telling them before you guys came on, I don't try to force people's opinions, but I want them to form their own opinion. I think my job as a teacher is to present them with all the issues and let them decide. But very real conversation was had, very important conversation, and I encourage everybody to go watch it. But the last thing before we go, you guys have graduated from one of the most prestigious institutions in the United States. And I have kids all the time tell me, I want to go to XYZ, PWI, HBCU, both. So if they want to achieve that, be able to go to these high prestigious schools and these be able to have that on their resume and have that job they want, why should they take academics seriously right now in order for people to take them seriously when they're filling out these college applications?
What I'll say is that, the United States, for better or worse, probably worse, they've designed the system so that some of the most consequential years of someone's life is the ages of 15 to 18. Like the academic achievements that are made during this period of their life will set the tone for the next 50 years. You may not understand that right now. And that's because people aren't talking about it enough. Same thing, kind of going back to our conversation around student loans. People aren't talking enough about that and how it can impact you, or credit. So it's very important at this time right now to start asking questions about, go deep in yourself, think about your identity, think about the type of life that you want to have, what your career aspirations are, what sort of impact that you want to make on the world, and then understand that education in the United States is one of the best vehicles we have for social mobility. If you're not sort of content with where you are in life, education can be a great vehicle to get you to, the next place. Obviously, be responsible with that. I don't encourage folks to take a lot of debt on. I think people should be open-minded to a range of different educational institutions, but understand that academics is very important, and there's so much to be learned as well. I think people, teachers and parents, they put a lot of pressure on these 15 to 18-year-olds right now about obsessing over test scores, obsessing over grades. But learning is also very important. You want to develop into a good human being, an empathetic human being. And our humanities, our philosophical classes, our ethics classes, these are very important, as are, the math and the sciences as well. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, and I'll just add to Tiago's point about education being this phenomenal vehicle. I 100% echo that sentiment. I think a part of dedicating yourself to academics is just habit building. How do I begin with the end in mind, right? And how do I set myself up for the future? Like I said earlier, because of great test scores, I was able to reduce the cost of Morehouse, right? And you can do
Mm-hmm.
that at literally any institution. That's the whole name of the game, right? And so you have to think with that end goal and saying, if college is for me and I want to pursue higher education, then the moment or the work that I'm doing in this current moment, rather, is so paramount for everything that I'm doing, right?
Awesome.
And you'll see it time and time again, as with everything. So dedicate yourself now, and it will pay off later, so that you can relax. And I think, some people dislike the structure of school per se, but then you go to a liberal arts institution like a Morehouse, and then now you're having this well-rounded education, right? You can start learning things that you actually are passionate about. If you have a passion for dance, philosophy,
Yeah.
political science, whatever, right? You can figure out your own path.
Awesome. Well, again, I know you guys got to get back to work. Thank you guys so much for fitting this in your schedule. Cameron, next time you're in Jackson, I'd love to get together. And we'd love to have you on campus sometime if you're ever in town.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Tiago, thank you so much. Just really wanted to have your opinion and your experience spoke to this class. So we really appreciate you guys taking some time for us, all the way from New York with Tiago Rachelson and Atlanta, Georgia with Cameron Nolan. Thank you guys so much for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate the
All right,
time.
appreciate it, guys. See ya.